Leaders are arriving from all over the world and all over the country. I am very certain that Johannesburg is ready for what it is that we're going to experience. An 80,000 person stadium is probably going to be jam-packed, even more than that. But we have been told that there are environments all over the country where in fact big screens have been put up so that everybody can begin to commiserate and commemorate the life of this wonderful man. Now it's absolutely no secret that Caiphus Semenya is a world-renowned musical arranger, composer, producer and musician, and he's worked together with others, of course, people like Alex Caiphus, and The Long Walk to Freedom will now stand for time immemorial. Thank you for joining us in the studio. For someone we can only refer to as Boet Caiphus.
Yes.
Your career in music spans an exceptionally long time. However, your time as a social and political activist surpasses that by numerous years, does it not?
Yes, it does. It does. My music career started when I was only 15. So you can count how long it's been. But as you say, my social responsibilities are just as equal as my musical, interests. But I really don't know how to put it. I am more of a social activist than I am as a musician.
Because isn't it that there was a time in our history where it was almost palatable for the apartheid government to endure our music rather than our persons or our speeches. And so it was used as a tool, in fact, to forward the messages of the anti-apartheid message.
Yes, yes. We had to, especially when we were outside, during the days of exile. That's when we consciously worked on producing music and writing lyrics that were relevant to the struggle. Even outside, we explained ourselves, explained the situation, explained the aspirations of the people inside the country through music. And that way, we actually got a lot of people and other artists to see our point of view, and hence we got a whole lot of support.
When did you go into exile?
Well, it was 1964, but I didn't go into exile. I was not going into exile because we had gone to New York with a play called Sponono. And when the play was over, unfortunately for me, as far as the government was concerned, the South African government, I worked with Miriam Makeba. And we had been warned, to stay away from Miriam Makeba once we got there. But I had known Miriam when I was a teenager, and in King Kong 1959, we worked together. Not really together, but, I was in the show too, and she knew me quite well. So when I arrived in New York, rather than listen to the warnings that I was warned to stay away from Miriam, Miriam was waiting at the theater outside because she had read in the papers that there's a South African group that's coming to the U.S. So she came, she didn't know who the personnel were, and there I was, and she was so happy. And I was so happy to see her, and Hugh Masekela came, Jonas Gwangwa came, and I forgot all about, the government telling me not to mix with Miriam Makeba because she was regarded as a communist. So when I wanted to return, because, one of my family members had passed on, and I was told, not here.
You couldn't come back home.
You couldn't come back, And your activities with Miriam Makeba and the things that you've been telling the world about us, not here.
And so it was just around about the time, in fact, that Nelson Mandela and the other treason trialists were in fact going to be incarcerated,
Right,
that
right.
you too were then, so to speak, incarcerated to the United States, unable
Yes.
to ever come home to South Africa again.
Yes, you're quite right. I mean, yeah, I was incarcerated in exile.
To,
You know,
to the extent that the reality that you knew was no more.
Exactly.
And that had to be just as hard.
Oh, it was. I mean, exile is not nice. You know, it's some people think that you were exiled in the U.S. It must have been very nice. I mean, Aretha Franklin, you know, the Quincy Joneses, and all these wonderful artists, you know, were with you. It's not true. You know, and especially if you left the country unwilling. You know, not that I was unwilling to go to New York. What I'm saying is that I wanted to come back, but I couldn't do it, you know. And I understood from their point of view why they could not let me come back. Not only me, later my wife, Jonas Bangwa, you know,
Yes,
we
many.
understood it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what are the kinds of messages and types of information communication that you were receiving about Mandela, about who he was, about the ANC in South Africa while you were gone?
Well, see, fortunately, Oliver Tambo, O.R. Tambo, was the leader was the president of the ANC outside. And he was such a wonderful man that he was never aloof. You know, he used to engage with all of us. And he's the first one who called us musicians cultural workers, you know. And because there was a time when some of us thought that it's just being an artist and not being part of the struggle in terms of the military aspect of it, you know. And I remember one time it was in New York and we were saying, you know, it would be nice if we were all trained for he said, no. We can't all be soldiers. You know, there's the cultural aspect of every movement,
Yes.
of every struggle, and you guys, you stay there. We will do the other stuff, you know. So when it comes to Nelson Mandela, because he used to work with Nelson, as you know, he used to update us, and because he was really the principal that was, you know, pushing the free Nelson Mandela, you know, from prison, Robben Island. So the whole world knew about Nelson Mandela being imprisoned through Oliver Tambo because he really worked hard.
And of course, it was a time of great generosity. I mean, information had to be shared. The heartbreak of finding out that others too have either gone into exile or, in fact, they had been imprisoned or, in fact, they had lost their lives and being so far from home. I can just imagine how hard that might have been, knowing that you were perhaps safer than most.
Yes, it was very difficult. But you know, when you're outside, especially if you're passionate about your people and your country, the reason we are here, because we were very passionate. We couldn't wait to come back. And I remember when I left the U.S., some of my friends said, "Are you really going back?" I said, "Yes, that's where I was born. That's where I belong," you know. It was difficult. But you know, because in exile, we were like a huge family, you know, and so we could lean on each other.
Yeah.
When times were really bad.
So
you know.
tell me, when did you come home? How soon after the release of Nelson Mandela did you return?
I returned in 1991, yes. Because that was after we did that Nelson Mandela tribute
Yes.
in London. But then I had to do certain things before I came back. And as soon as I was done, I was back in 1991.
When you heard that he had been freed, where were you? What did that feel like?
We were in Los Angeles, as a matter of fact. I remember we were watching TV, you know, because you see, we used to communicate with London, with Lusaka, so we knew what was happening. We knew what was happening in here. We knew what was happening around the world when it came to South Africans, you know. So there was that rumor, you know, that It looks like, they may be released. But we really didn't believe it. And then CNN, was it CNN or it's ABC, not SABC.
Yes.
It's ABC. So, and then we switched on the television, and there he was, de Klerk, former President de Klerk, making that historic announcement that all the bannings were rescinded, et cetera, the whole speech. And we were just amazed, And then finally, of course, we knew the ANC was unbanned, the PAC was unbanned, and so on. So we knew that, okay, the day has come now. Now, round one.
Caiphus Semenya, renowned musician, composer, music arranger in the studio with us, played a role in the musical scores that were put together by Alex Heffer for Long Walk to Freedom, the movie made by Anand Singh. And what an amazing experience that must have been. Without the knowledge that perhaps Tata would pass so soon after the launch of the film, it must have been a great way to go and step back into the life of a wonderful man, but also to step back into a time and be reminded again of what it is that he as an individual and so many others were exiled for, not of their own pollution, but in fact by the South African government of the past.